All right, everybody, welcome to part 2 of my ultimate guide to Fusion for beginners. Today, I hope we can pick right back up where we left off in the first video and go a little bit deeper with some beginner to intermediate concepts that'll help you right away with your Fusion. I wanted to show you how I designed this little phone stand. It's really fun. You can 3D print it. It breaks down into 2 pieces, so you can toss it in your backpack, nice low profile. And it kind of opens the door as a blank canvas for you to make something really custom for yourself by just going through the basic steps to get the frame put together. So without waiting any longer, let's jump right into today's topic. So to get right into it, we're gonna go back to basics here and we're gonna save our project, but I'm gonna add one more step to this that I didn't mention that time, and that is creating a new project every time you're venturing into a new full up design. Come up here to your data panel, click on new project, and for today, we're gonna call this Ultimate Guide 2. What this does is on the back end, creates a top level folder structure that will hold this design or any other design that you decide to add into this full up project. If you're like me, I started with a general project folder and it started accumulating a ton of subfolders and sub-projects that became confusing. So this is a nice way to sort of organize your files on the back end a little bit better. Now, just like last time, we're gonna go ahead and save this part. Go to save. I make sure that I am in the Ultimate Guide 2 project folder that I just created, and we're gonna call this phone stand. Last time I told you to do a new component because it's good practice. This time I figured I'd show you exactly why. This assembly is going to be made of 2 components, so we need to make sure we split those out into each of their own individual components that can then be assembled later. And to do that, you can right click and click new component, but I like to come up here to the assemble section under the solids tab and just click on this new component icon with the green plus. I'll call this phone stand top. Now we've got our first component ready to start editing. The first important new concept I'm going to bring up are parameters. These are super powerful, either dimensions, numbers, or equations that you can reference inside a design at any point. To find these, we can go to the Modify tab, click on Change Parameters, and this window pops up. Inside of here, we're going to create our own new parameter by hitting the plus sign. Now, going into this design, there are several dimensions that I already know I want to have. I know the width of my phone is about 80 millimeters with the case, so I'm going to create this parameter called p_width, and instead of just setting this to the total dimension that I'm talking about, which is the 80 millimeters, I'm actually going to split this in half because I want to use the mirror command later on to exploit this parameter. What's cool about the expression is you can set up a direct value or you can set up mathematical expressions to define what you want the output to be. So because I want this to be set to half the total width of the phone, I'm going to make this 80 / for divided by 2. And you can see here my output value is now 40 millimeters, which is what I want. What's nice too is you can set up a comment to remind yourself what this actually is for. So I'm going to type in phone width divided by 2, and then I hit OK. Now you can see we've created this new parameter. It's titled a user parameter, p width set to millimeters. Here's the expression that we set up, the value that it churns out, and a comment telling me what it is. There's a couple other parameters that I want to pop in here, which will be super helpful. So I go add. For this, I want to set the thickness of the actual parts that I'm going to 3D print, and I know I want those to be 5 millimeters. So I'm going to make a name, p_thick. For the expression, I'm just going to do 5, and my output value is 5, and I'll say part thickness. Okay, once again, hit add. This one I'm going to call slot. This is where parameters can actually get really cool. You can reference other parameters that you've already established into your expression for a new parameter. So because I already have the thickness established, I'm just going to keep that, p_thick. It starts populating. I hit enter so that when these parts actually fit together after I've 3D printed, I've accounted for any of the manufacturing sort of defects that come with 3D printing. As many of you know, they don't hold tight tolerances at smaller values. A general rule of thumb that I like to create for 2 parts when they're coming together is a 0.2 millimeter offset. You can set this for now, print it, and if it's too tight or too loose, you can adjust this in the future, but this tends to work pretty well for small parts like this for me. So I'm going to add that 0.2 millimeter offset, and you'll see my output value is now 5.2. For comment, I'm just going to say slot width, hit OK. Say I want to change the thickness of this later on, I'm going to make that change here and make it 6 instead of 5. And you'll notice it automatically updated my slot width. This is where this power comes in, is being able to make these updates on the fly and nesting in parameters so that you can capture all of your changes in one go. Set this back to 5, enter, and we are off to the races with our parameters. Now to jump right into it, we're going to create our first sketch for my top part. So I'm going to hit S key, sketch, create sketch. I'm going to pick my XY plane. I'm going to hit the L command for line tool, and I'm going to roughly sketch out this shape, trying to make sure I maintain these perpendicularities in all the corners. And there we go. We've got our defined shape. It's all closed off. That's why it's shaded blue on the inside. Now I'm going to define the dimensions. I hit D for this width up here. This is where I can finally use one of my parameters. I'm going to make this one P_width, and you'll see it start to generate for me. So I'm actually just going to hit enter and then enter again. And you'll see now it says FX, telling you that this is a parameter or some kind of function that's being used in my model now. For this sidewall, I'm going to make this 160. For these two lines here, I'm going to make this one 15, and I'll make this height 15 as well. As you can tell, we're not fully constrained yet based on the blue line still existing on the outside, similar to what we saw in the first video. Cool tip here, if you want to verify your sketches, you can come up and look at the sketch that you're actively working in. And in your browser tree, if it has a little pencil next to it, that means it's not fully defined yet. And the reason why, if I escape out of my dimension tool here, I can grab this and drag it around. We're not constrained. Even though I tried lining it up with the origin when we started, it didn't pick it up. So to constrain these together, I'm going to come up here to my coincident constraint, select that, click on this line, this vertical line, and then click the origin. Now those two are lined up. But if I escape out, I'm still able to move in this axis. So let's put this last constraint in. Come back to your coincident constraint, select this line, and click the origin again. Now these white lines are telling me I'm fully defined. I can also check again in my browser tree on my sketch, and I have this red lock icon telling me I'm fully defined. Now I'm ready to extrude this part. I'm gonna hit E, and it's already got my sketch highlighted, and I'm actually gonna use my thickness parameter that we defined earlier. P_thick, enter, and now we've got this body generated that I can use for my next command. Another really useful tool in Fusion is using their mirror command. If you have a set of geometry that you symmetrically want to mimic over a certain plane, this is a quick and easy way to do that, so you can reduce some of the complexity with a part if you know that you can exploit symmetry around it. To do that, I'm going to hit S. I'm going to start typing mirror, pops up, and under object type, I want to make sure I have body selected, and then you can select your first object. I'm going to click on this. For mirror plane, I'm actually going to exploit this YZ plane down here in my coordinate system that pops up. Select that. This green box shows up telling me that's what I'm about to mirror, to kind of give you a sanity check to make sure that's what you want to do. It is. I also want to make sure my operation is set to join, so this turns into one solid body combined. Hit OK. And now we've got the base frame of our part defined. Next, I want to put in my slot. To do that, I'm going to select on this top face. I'm going to hit S, sketch, create sketch. And this is actually pretty simple. We're going to use the 2-point rectangle tool, S, and I already have it populated as one of my sketch shortcuts here. So I'll select that. And if you don't have that selected, you can just search it with the S key, or you can come up here to your sketch bar and select it in the create section. I'm going to line it up here with the edge of the part. Select once, drag it out, drop it again. Next, I want to set the dimensions for this thing. So I hit D, start with this edge out here, drag it out and drop it. And this one is actually going to be our slot parameter that's accounting for that gapping that I need for my 3D print. Enter, enter. Next, I want to make sure that this is lined up on the center line, which I have referencing the origin right now. So to do that, I'm going to hit coincident, select this line, and then I want to select the origin. Now we're lined up in this direction. You can see that by escaping out of there and then dragging this around. It can only go up and down now, telling me I have one more direction to constrain. So D for my dimensions, select this edge and the bottom edge of the slot, drop it. I'm going to set that to 32. And there we go. Our slot is now defined. We're ready to extrude. E, highlight just that section alone. And similar to part one, I want to cut this all the way through the body and not have to worry about it in the future. So I'm going to change my extent type to object, select the bottom face of the part, double check that the highlighted red section is the part I want to cut out, operation set to cut, hit OK. And there we go. We've generated our slot. Now, the last thing I want to do before we move on to the next component is put in some fillets to sort of beautify the part a little bit and add a little bit more functionality to it. To do that, I hit the F hotkey and I'm going to select my 5mm radii that I want to do first. So it's going to be this edge, this one, this one, this one, the two at the opening of the slot. And then up on the top part, I want to get these two edges as well. So it's important to make sure you do all of your clicking before you type in your dimension. That way they all capture the same dimension. Make this 5, and that's great. But I'm not done yet. I really like being able to put all of my fillets under one command in my timeline. That way I can quickly jump back and see multiple fillets in one place to make adjustments. So I'm actually going to come up here to our fillet window and hit plus for add selection set. And I want to capture these two in the bottom corner as well. So just by clicking on those in my new selection set, I can set those to 10. And now I have finally put in all the fillets that I care to add to the part at this time. So I hit OK. And that is it for now for the top part that we wanted to create. All right, now that we've finished up with creating our top part, we're actually going to want to jump into our second component here that's going to be part of our assembly. And it's crucial to follow an order of operations here when setting up your second component. That way you populate it in the right part of your browser tree. So if you look right now at the phone stand top that we just created, I have this little white circle with a black circle inside of it. That means that's the current active component in the workspace. And importantly, if I was to activate a new component now, it would populate one that would be nested within that component itself. And that is not what we want. Instead, I'm going to come up here to phone stand at the top, activate that one, and I'm going to come over here and create my new component there. We'll call this phone stand bottom, hit enter, and there we go. Now you can see in my browser tree, both of these are equally nested below my top level. And importantly, we are now activated in the new component, which is exactly what I want. Another thing that can be important if you're wanting to maintain symmetry or part features from a second part, they leave this earlier part kind of ghosted out in your work plane, so you can still reference it if you want to. But for this, I don't want to. I'm going to just use our parameters and other functions to create a brand new part. And I don't want to have this in my work plane as something I can highlight. So to simply do that, come up here and click on the eyeball to mute that one out. It doesn't go away. It's not deleted. It's just hiding. You can enable it and disable it as you need. Now to jump right into it, we're going to start a new sketch. So I'm going to hit the S hotkey, sketch, create sketch. And once again, I'm going to do the XY plane. We're going to go ahead and start a 2-point rectangle, which I can get to in my sketch shortcuts here. Left click, drop it off in space, hit my D. We're going to define this edge, and it's going to be the same as last time, where we do P_width, set to 40, which is exactly what I want. And then for the height on the part, I'm going to do 95. And that's all there is to this one for now. So we'll go ahead and extrude, set that to P_thick using our parameters again. And we've got this basic half of a part. Now, also like last time, I'm going to mirror this part. So I bring up my shortcut menu, mirror, and I make sure that I'm selecting a body. And for my mirror plane, I'll select on that to pick it. I also want to use the YZ plane as well. Shows me what it's going to look like. That looks great. We're going to join it, hit OK. Now we can knock out some other important features that we want to add to this so that we can slot the two pieces together and add some more functionality to the part. To do that, I'm going to select this top plane, S, sketch, create sketch. And for this, I'm going to make a cutout in the top where the cable can go through. I'm going to have a hole where the cable can feed up into the phone, and then an adjoining slot on the opposing side of this geometry so we can slot the two halves together. So I'll hit C to start with my circle, I can drop this anywhere. Then I'm gonna hit S and grab my 2-point rectangle, reference this edge, drag it out, drop it. And then for this last feature, we're actually going to use the arc tool. And specifically, I want the 3-point arc. We come up here. The only relation I really care about is this top edge. Click once to place it, click a second time on the same line. And then for this third point, you'll see when I drag it out, it gives me an arced radius that I can set for my cutout. And I'm just gonna drop that randomly out here. Now I've got some important constraints to throw on this thing so that everything stays aligned to the center axis. So I'm gonna do that by using the horizontal and vertical constraint here. I'm gonna select the inside of this radius up here that we just set. And then I'm gonna place that in relation to the origin. And now our arc is centered up here off the center line of the part. While we're here, I'm also going to do this to the circle. I'm going to select the center of that circle I dropped and also relate it to the origin as well. So now both our circle and our arc are related to the center line of the part. Now I'm going to switch over to normal dimensions. I'm going to select the opening of the slot on this side. And once again, we're going to use our slot parameter, enter, sets it accordingly to 5.2. I'm also going to constrain the side of this part to the center like we did with the last one. And then selecting the dimension tool again, I'm going to define where these features are positioned. So relative to the bottom here, I'm going to select that bottom side of the slot, drag it out. I'm going to set that to 21.5. Then for my circle, I actually want to keep it related to the slot. I could define it from the bottom edge to the center, but if this slot height ever changes, it will get further and further from the hole or potentially right on top of it. And I want them to maintain a distance to locate the circle. So to do that, I'm going to select the center point on the circle, the bottom of the slot, drop it. I'm going to define that small distance to 9. Now for the circle itself, I'm going to select the edge of it, drag it out, and I'm going to set that to 15 millimeters. Now the circle and the slot are fully defined. Now to finish off constraining my top circle here, I'm first going to, you might have to zoom in a little bit here and make sure you select the point where the arc ends on this side, and then the left face. We'll set that to 15. And then lastly, we will define the radius on this arc cutout here. So I'm going to left click that edge of the arc, drop it, and we'll make that 25. Now we are ready to extrude these features into the part. I make sure to only select those things that I want to cut out. And then for my extent type, once again, drop down to object to make sure it goes to the bottom of the part at all times. Select the bottom of the part. Sanity check here just to make sure that everything is cutting what we want to cut. I'm happy with that. Operation is cut. We hit OK. And now our features are populated into the bottom part of the stand. Lastly, like I did on the other part, I'm going to do my beautification here real quick by adding in some fillets and a chamfer. So we'll hit the F to pull up the fillets tool first. I'm going to select this edge, these two on the opening of the slot, this corner, and this further outside corner here. Notice I did not do these yet because I want to set them to a different dimension. So with the 6 selected, I'm going to go ahead and define those at 5 millimeters, but I also want to add one more selection set in here like we did with the previous part. So I hit add, and now I select these 2, and I'm going to set those to 3. Hit enter, and those are good to go. Now, lastly, in terms of just some nice part functionality here, I want to add a chamfer to the bottom and top of that hole. To do that, I'm going to hit S, chamfer, and I'm going to select the top of the circle that we have cut out and the bottom of the circle that we have cut out on those edges, making sure I'm just selecting the edges on the bottom and the top. And for this, I'm going to set it to 1 millimeter, enter, and boom, we are all good to go there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is actually assemble these parts together inside of our CAD to see how it looks and give us some visual representation of what the final assembled product is going to look like. And this introduces a new concept, which is assembling a joint in between two parts. And don't worry, this is pretty straightforward for this part. And hopefully this introduces you to some way to put multiple components together through relationships that are driven by the software. Now to do that, I'm actually going to come up and activate my top component. And you'll notice for now, I've left this phone stand top muted. I'm actually doing that so I have a better vantage point to set up the start of our joint when we assemble these two parts together. So to start a joint, I'm just going to hit J. As soon as I start hovering over the component, I haven't clicked anything yet, it starts picking up little reference points or features to make it really simple for us to connect two coordinate systems together that we define by selecting the initial plane and or point that we want to go with. So I know these two are coming together here at this little square. So I'm going to select that on this one, and you'll notice it grays that part out because now it's looking for another component to assemble too. And that's where I want to unmute my phone stand top part. And I'm going to come to the internal pocket on this slot and select the same reference point for the two of these to mate to. So I select that, and you'll notice the part moves into place. Importantly, this is not the final destination that I want these two to be joining at just face to face like this. I actually need them set 90 degrees apart from each other. So you can type in 90 degrees here, but what I've found is a lot easier is to actually use this little slider here on the left-hand side that pops up. So I'm just going to click it and drag it down until I have it set at 90 degrees exactly. I release, kind of do a little bit of a orbit here to make sure that looks correct, and it does. And I'm going to hit OK. So to have a little bit better visibility of the part when I orbit around, I'm going to come down to grids and snaps and uncheck my layout grid. That way I can orbit this piece around and check it out to make sure it looks good and looks applicable for the setup that I want this to be in its final form. Another cool thing is that Fusion actually populates these joints as relationships externally to any of the independent parts or part features inside of their own browser. So you'll notice there's this little blue and white icon that's coming up near the center where we set that relationship. If you don't want to see that populated in your model, you can just come up to relationships, there's a drop down where you can see what joints you've enabled on your part, and you can rename them if you need to come back to them and see what things you've put together. But here in the top level, you can just click on this eyeball and it will remove that from your work plane, leaving you with a nice, clean, crisp part without any additional annotations or anything, so you can orbit it around and check the part out to make sure it works. So I found that the best way to get better at any skill is mastering the basics with repetition, whether that's studying a new concept every day or teeing myself up to constantly tackle new designs, which actually aligns perfectly with today's sponsor, Brilliant. Understanding how to structure daily problem solving with a custom tailored plan is crucial, and that's where Brilliant helps you become a better problem solver with thousands of interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. Brilliant starts you off by mastering the foundations of a given topic, then helps you level up to increasingly challenging problems. Learning a little every day is one of the most important things you can do, both for personal and professional growth. That's where the app keeps you on track to reaching your learning goals one day at a time. Brilliant's scientific thinking courses have been one of my go-to topics, helping you to develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with the key concepts. You'll learn to think like an engineer and focus on application of principles, not just memorize equations. To learn for free on Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/TyWritings, scan the QR code on screen, or click on the link in the description. Brilliant is also giving my viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. And now let's jump back into designing in Fusion. So at this point in the build, you could technically take off and do whatever you want with this part. It is fully useful. It is ready to go. You could throw it on your 3D printer right now. Or if you really wanted to get crazy, you could start experimenting with some text or other kinds of features, your own special patterns, or anything you want to put on the face of this to sort of customize it the way you want to. So feel free to jump off here if that feels like something you're ready to do and you want to tackle that on your own. Or if you'd like, I'm going to go through a way that I do one of my favorite patterns, which is the honeycomb pattern, into a part to kind of clean it up and add a little bit of life to the part itself. So to do that, we're actually just going to be editing this phone stand top part that we created originally, and we're going to add some more features to it, which is a good lesson in how you can do downstream changes when you create a part to add in things as you're going through your different iterations of your product or whatever design you're coming up with. So I'm actually going to go up to my browser tree and activate just the phone stand top part again. And I'm going to mute out the bottom for now because I'm not going to need it for this little section. So selecting this top face, S, create sketch. And what I'm first going to do is actually create a little construction line here to give us a line to reference down the center of the part, and to also give us a place that we can reference as a horizontal center point as well. And that'll make more sense in 1 second. So first thing I want to do is start the line tool with L. And then importantly, I'm going to hit X, and that enables your construction line here. So watch this. If I hit X again, it turns it off. X re-enables it, and that's actually what I want here because I don't want this line to be part of the final form. It's just for a reference to help us construct our geometry. Now, the first place I want to place this line is actually down here on the top corner of our slot cutout. So I click there, and then I'm going to drag this up and pick up the center of the top line up here as well. The next thing I'm going to do is create a center point rectangle. So I'm going to hit S and type rectangle. And I want center rectangle. And what's cool about this line we just created is I can find the exact center of it when I hover over the line and that little triangle pops up. That's the center of the line we just established. So I'm going to click once, drag it out, drop it, good to go, right? Well, not quite, because you'll notice that we left the construction mode turned on, and you have to disable that anytime you're making more line features. So to fix that, I'll show you how we can do that real quick. I escape out of this, I select one of these lines, hit X, it's normal again, select X, select X, select, and X. Now we are back to solid line geometry for the outside, and it's shaded blue now, showing that we have a closed off rectangle here. I'm going to click on coincident. I'm going to select this top line, and I want it to be positioned to the top of this line here, which automatically snaps down here as well. Next, I want to get these sides addressed, which I can't do with the coincident. I have to use the collinear constraint up here. So selecting that, I'm going to select this left edge and then pick the left edge of the part. And now you'll see in all white that we have fully defined those features. Now, the last thing I want to do is match up these corner fillets inside of my sketch so that when I extrude and do some other changes here, it matches that same profile. And we can do that with the fillet tool while we're sketching. So I hit S, fillet. You'll notice there's a 2D and a 3D one. For this, we want the 2D one that's represented by the lines with the bend in the corner. Select it. Then to get it in the corner of whatever lines are intersecting, I'm going to select this and select this top one as well. You might want to add a dimension or something like that to this right now, but this is just like the normal fillet where you need to make your selections first before you define it. So I'm going to keep going around, select this line and this line. Down here, I'm going to select this line and this line, this one and this one. And now we all have those set to be equal to each other when we define it. And you'll notice I get a warning here saying that I broke some of my constraints, and that's okay. I can actually check inside of this active sketch that we're working in, and it is saying I'm still fully locked out and defined right now, which is good. Now, you'll notice too, this is set to 20. I don't actually want that, so I'm going to select that dimension and hit delete. What I'm actually going to do is use my equals constraint so that it always maps to be the same radius as these corners are now. So I hit equals, I select this corner, and I select the corner of the base part, and now all four have updated to be the same fillet definition as the base part. Now that we have the outside of the frame established, we can use one of my favorite tools, which is the offset tool, so that we can set a parallel set of lines all the way around this same border to create the border for the body we're going to extrude here in a second. So because it's in my toolbar, I'm just going to select the offset tool, click on this border that we just created, and I'm going to drag it in a little bit, and you'll see this faint line starts to appear when I drag it. And that's what we want to create that internal offset. So when you drag it in, it's a minus sign. So we're going to have to abide by that to make sure we get the right distance. So I'm going to hit minus 3.5, hit enter, and now we've created our little picture frame to go around the geometry we're going to make here with the honeycomb pattern. So we're going to hit extrude, select just that border that we created. Similar as other times, we want our extent type to be to object, and I want it going to the bottom of the part. And right now it's set to cut, which is not what I want. For operation, I actually want to change that to new body and hit okay. Now you'll see the faint outline of that body positioned on top of and within the existing body we had. And to verify that we made two of them, I can go to my drop down for the phone stand top. Under bodies, I'll hit that drop down, and body 1 is our original body. Body 2 now is our picture frame that we're going to incorporate later. Now it's time to get into making our honeycomb pattern. To do that, I'm going to select the regular body here in the center. We're going to hit create sketch. And here for a moment, I'm just going to mute out that second body that we made just so we can focus on the current part that we're working in. We'll come back to that in a second. Once again, I'm going to hit L for the line tool and then X to make it a construction line. Place it up here. Also place it down in the corner of the slot to give me a nice center line for this working area. And I'm going to hit X while I'm at it so I can disable the line type and not be in construction next time I open another sketch tool. Now we're going to set up the base part that we're going to pattern, which is going to be a polygon. So to do that, you can hit the S key, polygon, and we actually want to use a circumscribed polygon here. Select, find my center point on this line we just created, click once, drag it out, doesn't matter where you drop it. Now we have the base definition for our little hexagon here that we're going to pattern in a second. Switch to my dimension tool to fully define it. I click on that edge and then I click the center, drag out. I want to set that to 4 millimeters, and I'm going to use my horizontal vertical constraint and select this one that's almost vertical already. And now we are fully defined. The last thing I need to do is create two reference features inside of the part that are going to help me when I'm extruding my pattern. And this will make sense in a second, bear with me. L for line tool, X to make a construction line, select the center and then connect it to the center of this edge up here. Once again, select the center and then connect it to the center of this edge here. And that is all we need for the moment. So I'm going to hit E, select our part we just created, and I'm only going to drop it down 1 millimeter to just kind of cut out a little bit of the body. So -1, cut operation is set, which is good. Hit OK. And that is the beginning of the pattern we're going to make. Now let's go ahead and jump into a rectangular pattern. So I hit S, rectangular pattern, enter. For type, we're just going to keep it rectangular. Object type is set to bodies, but I actually want to use features instead. And so there's two ways that you can select the feature. You can just hover over and pick the part, or on your timeline, you can select it down there too, which I'm going to do for now. Then we need to define our axes, and this is where those two construction lines I just made are going to come in super helpful. So I'm going to select that so we can pick them. And right now you'll notice that they don't appear, which is okay. We have to highlight that sketch again so we can use those features. So I come down here to sketch 5, the last one we created, enable it, and we can see those two construction lines here. So I'm going to select this one, and now we are set to move our pattern out in two different directions. Now for quantity, distance, and direction, this is going to tell the patterning tool how many of these you want repeated, how far out you want them spread, and then for direction, you can have them just going in one direction or symmetrically around the base part that you're using to define the pattern. For today, for direction, I want to set both to symmetric. For quantity, I want 13 on both axis 1 and axis 2. And then for distance, I'm going to set these both to 65. And you'll see that it has already generated the green cutouts to kind of simulate what the pattern's going to look like, and that's great. But we did get a warning saying that there are too many instances. Consider changing your compute option, which is fine for us. We don't need the adjust option set right now. We can just use optimize, and that'll help a little bit on the computing side of the software in the background. To remove a lot of these from our selection, we can come over here to suppression, enable that little checkbox, and now we can pick out the ones that we don't need for this part. So for me, I'm going to start by drawing a line here, and then same with my edges. I'm going to not include the ones that I know are going to fall inside of that border we're going to extrude here, and same with the bottom, and same with this edge. Now we know the basic form that we want to keep for everything within the part. Right now it's on us to go ahead and suppress everything else outside of the body that we don't want to keep. And you'll do that just with one click at a time. So once you're done selecting, it should look something like this. This does help Fusion on the back end with computing these instances across the part. And I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to disable that sketch again. And now look at that. We have a nice clean honeycomb pattern going across the top of our part. Lastly, to bring back in that previous body that we made and have that nice clean border going around everything, we're going to use something called the combine tool. So to do that, I'm actually going to make sure I'm in my active part browser, and I'm going to drop down the body section. I'm going to re-enable that second body, and I'm going to use my combine tool. You can just search it, combine, and make sure we're using the blue one that's used in this kind of solid modeling environment. Now with that selected, I'm actually going to pick body 1 from my browser tree as the target body over here. And then for tool bodies, I'm going to select body 2. For operation, I want to make sure these are joint. So this will just turn it into one solid body once we're done with this process, and everything else looks good. So I'm going to hit OK, and there we have it. Our part now has this really nice crisp honeycomb pattern going across it, and it's closed in with this border to kind of give it a nice finishing touch on the part. Now we can go back into our top level, activate it, and then unmute our phone stand bottom. And there we have a nice final look at what our part will be when we take it to our 3D printer or we manufacture it however we want. Lastly, just something fun that I like to do with my parts when I'm done with them to kind of bring a little more life to them is add an appearance. So I'm going to hit the S and type appearance. This will pop up. And in here, Fusion has a ton of different types of appearances you can throw onto stuff. They have different metals, they have different colors in the metals, they have powder coating, anodizing, all kinds of stuff. So feel free to play around with these. And if you select on one and you see this color here that you want to use, but it's not yet able to be drug into your space, you might have to download it just by selecting this little arrow with the line underneath it. And then it'll immediately pop into your appearances browser so that you can pull that and add it to the part. For me, I really like using this capped on color just because I think it looks really cool. And to apply it, you make sure that you're applying to bodies and components, not just faces. You could do faces if you just want to color specific surfaces on your part. But for me, I want the whole thing to maintain that appearance. So I click it once, drag it, and drop it right onto the parts. And now they both have color added to them so I can get a better finished result look. Just like last time, we're going to go ahead and export this thing out to my 3D printing software. So importantly, make sure you save it. Hit OK. And what's cool is that even though we created two different parts inside of our assembly, you can export both of them at the same time to go into your slicer at once. To do that, come up here and right click on the top level part, phone stand, and we're going to come down to save as mesh. For preparation type, we're going to click print utility. And for me, I have Bamboo Lab printers, so I'm gonna make sure for application, I have Bamboo Studio selected. Feel free to tune this to your own slicing software. And then for format, I like to use the 3MF, and then I'm gonna hit OK. And boom, just like that, our parts have come into the build plane and they've maintained that assembled look to a degree, and the slicing software has put them down on the plate in a way that it kind of makes sense to it to abide by those relationships. So the last thing for me, I'm just gonna click on my part, set it flat to the build plane, and then I'll just reorganize these on the build plate to make sure they look good. And just like that, you're good to go. Over the last, half hour that we've spent together, we've got a part, we made it, 2 different components that go together, and then we've immediately got them onto our printer's slicer so that we can send them to our printers now. Thanks for tuning into this one. I know it was a little bit long, but hopefully this drills down a ton of information that you can take and run with today. I'd love to hear your feedback down in the comments. I'll do my best to keep responding to everybody and making sure that we can troubleshoot any small issues that popped up. But if you're happy with that and you're off to the races, feel free to check out another couple videos I'm gonna float here on the screen to help kind of navigate a couple more fusion topics or design topics or other things that I try to put on this channel to help you out. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.